Let's shift over to track fusions and just provide some context, Marcia, before I talk to you about what your thoughts are. You know, this is a rare genotype. It's not found in a lot of solid tumor malignancies, although highly enriched in pediatric cancers. Clearly, the design of the trial, basket trial, leading to a genotype-directed therapy approval based on a rare, in a rare genotype. Where do the availability of TRK inhibitors with this rare niche in TRK fusions, are we moving the field forward with this?
I would say yes, very much so. And the other thing about it is that everything that Ed was saying actually leads directly into now our ability to make strides in cancers that are more rare. Because historically we couldn't get a lot of these agents because we didn't have enough patients, we couldn't enroll them in trials, there wouldn't be enough to show your 5 or 10% difference. Now that you can do a study, get 55 patients and show activity is really a new day for the rare cancer population who historically were left out of a lot of these trials. The second thing is there are not enough patients to do a lot of that exploratory work. So in lung cancer, when you've got hundreds of patients and you can do the battle trial type study and get data on 240 patients, that won't happen necessarily with rare cancer. So now the fact that we can actually get drugs that are possible for these rare cancers, immediately identify them, and move forward with therapies is a new thing that we could do that we couldn't do previously. And when they are enriched, it's straightforward, but also a lot of these rare cancers don't just have one sometimes of a molecular marker that can be targeted, sometimes they have multiple ones. And so just doing a really good test that finds those now can create a hope for a patient that otherwise would have nothing. Yeah.
You know, I was thinking these rare cancers, Marcia, that they're teaching us, right? They're teaching us the molecular lessons. If it's a rare cancer, you can get to the bottom of what's going on with that. You know, the cancers that Philip and I take care of are messy, multiple gene abnormality things, and would be impossible to sometimes figure out what's the driver. But the rare cancers often have a single driver, which then when you figure that out, and you think, oh, well, is it involved in any of these other cancers? And we pick them up. So it's sort of those nice rare cancer folks that are teaching us the lessons.
Yeah, that's why I have a job now.
I'm also wondering if one of the lessons here to pull off a clinical trial with this rare genotype, it takes exceptional cooperation among institutions and physicians. Is this a lesson as well, that we all are in this together and it takes the communication, the crosstalk to get these patients onto these trials, given how rare this gene is?
I think people who've worked in pediatric cancers have always known that, but rare cancers has always been, that's always been required. But now everything is sort of becoming a rare cancer if you're going to start pulling off these very small percentage genotypes in even the most common cancers.
It essentially evens the playing field a little bit. And so for those of us who treat the rare cancers, and you always saw the drugs first get approved in lung cancer, they first get approved in breast cancer, then you have access to them and you could create an IIT, you could try to get access to them. Now the patients with these rare tumors are invited right up front. Yeah. You need them in these trials. The trials are enriched for them because they're desperate for trials. There isn't the phase 2, phase 3s. And the patients are willing, the physicians are willing to collaborate. It really has created a really uniform way that we approach patient care now, which is wonderful.
I would agree that it is sparked a lot of interest from the patient side with these rare tumors, knowing that some of these tumors are highly enriched for these rare mutations and we can offer targeted therapies and it's not all chemotherapy, and that we can make meaningful differences to these patients.
I think I'll give you an example though, and Philip knows this well, where I think it went too far actually, is that when the MSI indication came out for all tumors with MSI, one of the pancreas advocacy groups put on their website a new drug for pancreas cancer. Well, the reality is that's less than 1%. And we actually as a community thought that was overstating the benefit. And so these make for great press releases. This is really a dramatic impact for individual patients. But we also have to balance that enthusiasm against the chances that you're going to actually have one of these.
Ed, you?
Yeah, I think an important aspect also interject in here, and it tags on to what other people have talked about, is that we are wanting to include more patients because of the targets that are more specific. We've come through this dilemma of having a patient in our own field with an EGFR mutation who's a performance status 3, who by no means would be included in any clinical trial out there, but clinically we would definitely treat them because we know there's an 80 to 90% response rate. They're probably going to be just fine in 2 weeks, but we would never not consider treating them. So what has evolved in our clinical trial sort of experience, and this was a group that I helped lead from ASCO with Friends of Cancer Research, was to actually change the eligibility criteria. And we've modified 7 criteria, which CTEP has now accepted. If you download the protocol templates, they've accepted our minimum age requirements, brain met modifications, creatinine clearance, HIV, other things. We're actually launching a version 2 now to get rid of those washout periods, which make no sense, and the 30-day testing limits and other things, because what we need is a real-world population. We don't need the folks who are traveling long distances to come to centers. We need folks who are just have these different molecular abnormalities where they live. The commercial testing out there is so prevalent. We need to help capture these patients so that they have these opportunities to be in these studies.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's important that identification of these rare genotypes not only changes the trial design, as you were talking about with Battle and these umbrella trial designs, but also actually lending a little more flexibility to trial eligibility so that you can include these patients. I'll balance that with what John said, which is, I think, important. Yes, I think there's been a lot of efforts out there to celebrate a lot of different drugs that may only fit a particular patient. And I think one of our new jobs as physicians, which we never thought we would have, and perhaps this is emblematic of the embarrassment of riches we have with therapies, is to temper the enthusiasm sometime. I think we have to make sure we're giving the right drug to the right patient, but also message to these patients that are calling, this drug is most likely not for you.
But I mean, if you look at it, there are small percentages, but if you multiply by the number of people around with the cancer, and the sad fact is that I'm sure as we speak, there are a number of many patients who do carry these mutations and no one knows about it. And these are people who can easily be benefiting from improvement in survival with maybe less toxicity and other things. Which can
I think also we don't necessarily always know the percentages, because fusion testing, for instance, for the ones that we're talking about later in this discussion, if it's a fusion, that testing's been around, what, 1 or 2 years? Right. And even the data that we have may have been like all comers, so I'll take thyroid cancer as my pet thing. When we have the numbers, that's all comers. Well, 90% of those patients will never even see my door because so many people will be cured. But who's actually gone and figured out what's the rate in the people who recur and have metastatic disease? No one. Right. So, we don't necessarily even know sometimes the implications and how far these are going to reach.
And that commonality is also something where everybody looks at lung cancer. Ben and I do a lot of lung cancer, and they think, oh, it's everywhere, everyone's got that. Well, as we're seeing now, it's actually a big conglomeration of small subsets. And I have a soft spot for sarcoma in me. People think, well, sarcoma, it's not a rare cancer, but it is. Actually, it's a 200 rare cancers. And we have a group that helps raise money for us back home, the Paul Tackett's Foundation for Sarcoma Research. And they're dedicated to raising money to help patients with sarcoma. And so I've become very involved with it. I know more about sarcoma now than probably thyroid than I used to, Marcia. But it is a very complex area that is in need of some sort of magnitude of jump in therapy for targeted therapies.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing that piggyback on what Philip said, which is that yes, this is a rare genotype, or these are rare, but conglomerately across the country.
Or the globe.
Or the globe. This is a large group of patients. It reminds me when the ALK story came out, and a great slide that shows that there are more ALK patients out there than there are CML patients. But yet that makes the cover of Time, yes, in 2001. And so, pushing forward this message that there are actually in sheer number, more ALK mutated lung cancer than there is for CML. So a celebration to all the work we've done, but also to make sure that these patients get to the drug.